Hello everyone, and welcome to another What If scenario. Today, we're going to be talking about Piccolo. Specifically, what if Piccolo survived the Nappa fight and went over to Namek with Gohan and Krillin possibly? But before we go on with this scenario, I have a guest on my channel today, and his name is Real to Real. How are you doing, man?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me on again. These are always a whole lot of fun, considering the fact that, what ifs are kind of a bit of my specialty. I mean, not necessarily, but it's always a really interesting discussion to be had, so thanks for having me on.
Definitely, and there's a lot of people I like having what if discussions with, but you always bring up a pretty good perspective that nobody else has. So imagine this scenario, Real. So Piccolo, instead of sacrificing his life against Gohan, going over and taking the blast against him, what if instead, like how Team 4-Star kind of joked around about, what if Piccolo just grabbed Gohan instead and just survived that blast, and instead of the blast hitting Piccolo, what if that blast instead just missed him entirely just because he grabbed Gohan like you probably should have? So what do you think, what's your first thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting situation when you have Piccolo basically surviving against Nappa. One of the things I would say is we don't necessarily know what would exactly happen after that. I mean, there's two kind of branches you can make. One, he survives the whole fight in general, considering the fact that after Piccolo sacrificed himself to Nappa to save Gohan, everything kind of just slowed down. And I know from like cinematic timing and whatnot, it was only probably like a minute or maybe just even a couple seconds in between Piccolo's death and Goku actually showing up. But you'd imagine that if he was just going to dodge the attack, the fight wouldn't have slowed down as much as it did, and he could still potentially die in that minute. But let's just kind of go on and say he didn't necessarily lose, or he didn't necessarily die at any other point besides that. And so when you have it like that way, you have Gohan, Krillin, and Piccolo still alive, and Goku shows up, easily takes out Nappa. I don't see that changing at all. But then you have an interesting situation, because I think that also branches out into two different situations, where Goku basically tells everyone to leave, or Piccolo stays behind to fight with Goku. And we get kind of another Raditz situation where they're still kind of outmatched, but at the same time it's like this group fight. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely do see that happening, because like you were saying, that the whole thing with this scenario is that Piccolo at this point is kind of unpredictable, because one thing is that his character arc kind of got resolved by him sacrificing his life to Nappa to save Gohan. And the thing is that him surviving that fight, his character arc still isn't fully resolved at that point. So at this point I see like things branching out to either scenario A or scenario B, like you were saying. That one scenario is that somehow during this fight Piccolo does die against Vegeta or something like that. But let's say he does die against Vegeta. He doesn't have that impactful death as whenever he sacrificed his life to Gohan. But one thing is that a lot of people can argue that we already know what Piccolo is capable of, and him sacrificing his life to Nappa to save Gohan is already showing just like kind of, because one of the things that actually makes these what if scenarios interesting, just to kind of go off topic for 2 seconds, is that we already know what these characters are capable of.
No, I think that's what you're saying. I mean, like, I think it was a realization for Goku, Gohan, and Piccolo when Piccolo basically sacrifices himself for Gohan's life, himself included, knowing that he would be able to go through that particular length, that length of character development, or just kind of protection to someone who's the son of his mortal enemy at that point. Because even though we can get it twisted and think that Piccolo was a good guy during the fight with the Saiyans, he wasn't. He wasn't necessarily turning a new leaf at that point. The thing that really helped him do that was not only training Gohan, but also sacrificing himself for that. So if Piccolo doesn't die, then potentially, considering the fact that he doesn't die, Goku takes out Vegeta, or Goku and Piccolo take out Vegeta in the same way that they took out Raditz, then you have a situation where you have to think perhaps maybe Piccolo I guess, is still evil, but considering the fact that Goku is just so much further beyond him, he changes that way, but it's still much less impactful than him literally sacrificing himself for Goku's son.
I agree, because even if we were to go towards the first scenario where I was saying where he dies against Vegeta, that's still, one, just for basic things, like, that's just not as good of a death as him dying sacrificing his life against Nappa. So from a story standpoint, already that suffers a lot. But I would say what makes this scenario interesting is actually discussing the second possibility of him going over to Namek. Because actually, like, I'm not too sure if you've seen Mr. Fusion's video where he said and actually brought up the point where Piccolo coming in at such a late point of the Frieza arc kind of was not really too effective with him kind of being connected with that story. Just because he kind of just came in at the end, had a one-chapter fight if you're going by the manga, and then all of a sudden he's just outclassed in every single way, and the only thing he really does to impact the story is basically let Goku get off the Genki Dama and kind of serves as a catalyst for him turning Super Saiyan. So to me, I think that what would make this scenario interesting is making it to where this could actually be more about Piccolo's story, and maybe at this point, maybe he could have his character arc resolved a little bit later in the story. And that, to me, is what makes this particular What If intriguing.
Yeah, I see what you mean there. And the one thing that I would like to see, so we're just kind of boil it down. So Piccolo doesn't die, but we consider the fact that Yamcha, Tenshinhan, and Chaozu die. And what we were talking about before we started recording, we kind of came to the idea that potentially, the dragon could bring back Yamcha and Tenshinhan, but not necessarily Chaozu, because Chaozu actually died in Dragon Ball. He can't revive the same person twice. But we have the Dragon Balls. So, considering the fact that they had the Dragon Balls, Piccolo at this point hasn't sacrificed himself, but in our scenario, he is actually I guess he's a good guy now, even though he didn't sacrifice. Then what they do is Goku is still beat up and everything. Instead of having to get there immediately and having that particular pressure, even though Vegeta still left and all this other stuff that they were doing, potentially they just gathered the Dragon Balls and they could literally wish themselves some Namek. And that would put kind of a roadblock, I think, when it comes to the time that they spent trying to get there, just even a couple days, and then Goku's progression, if he actually joins them without training in the pod for as long as he did when the Ginyu Force comes, or even Frieza fight. Then you also have Piccolo's situation, where if Piccolo is the one who joins them, and just let's say for a fact that he does join them, what does he do? How does he interact and all this other stuff? I would agree that it would be interesting to see him interact with his people, but Piccolo, for the most part, is a loner. It seems like a lot of them are loners. Like a lot of these, especially the higher leveled and higher beings in the Namekian people are loners. I mean, you got Kami living on the lookout. Piccolo does his own thing. Guru does his own thing. They're not necessarily bogged down with having a lot of people around them, so maybe that's potentially because there's not a whole lot of them or something else like that. But just having Piccolo there, as strong as he is, if he hadn't died, if he hadn't gotten stronger in between, there would have been an issue of like how strong is he compared to people like Nail or the warrior clans of the Namekian people, and how can all these Namekians that he would potentially have interactions with and have just kind of a friendship or some kind of a bond with actually interact with each other when it comes to Frieza killing off his race? How would he take that? At what point would the fusion technique that they used with Nail kind of come into play? And how many other Namekians would he actually fuse with? Considering the fact that Piccolo is probably one of the strongest Namekians at that point, would there be a consensus, that, especially from the remaining warrior clans, that they just need to combine their powers and fuse, even though it's kind of this taboo technique that they used in order to actually fight Frieza, and then considering the fact that he actually has this, considering the fact that he has been a part of this, he's learned about these people, and he's seen the genocide of his own race. Would Piccolo literally just end it? Because if he does the fusion technique with someone not only like Nail, but also other dragon or other fighting type Namekians or warrior class, then his power would be astronomical. Probably not Frieza at his peak, but as long as he kind of gets a good one-off on Frieza, he could potentially kill him or mortally wound him to the point where it doesn't matter that Goku doesn't have that training, or Vegeta didn't have all those Zenkai boosts, or Gohan and Krillin didn't do this, that, or the other. And like you said, at least in that scenario, it could potentially be Piccolo just owning the entire arc.
Gosh, I have a lot to say with what you just said. So for the very first thing you said about everyone gathering the Dragon Balls and wishing them to Namek, God, that would be a series ender right there. Because you know that Frieza or Vegeta or something would happen to where Namek would be done for, and Frieza would probably come over to Earth or something like that to trace the last living Saiyan or something after torturing Vegeta.
I'm wrong. I should say I'm wrong. They used the Dragon Balls to wish Goku back. The Dragon Balls wouldn't be used to wish them there. That was wrong. I'm sorry.
But even if they were wished there, I think that'd be a series ender just waiting too much time, just because time was kind of the essence at that point. And one of the things is since if we were to say that Piccolo goes over to Namek to have that connection to his people, one thing about that is that I think it would be Piccolo and Krillin. And what I was saying earlier is that I don't think that Gohan would go over to Namek in this situation. Because one of the things is that whenever Gohan protested to his mom about going over to Namek, he brought up the whole point is that I feel like I'm responsible for Piccolo's death, like I feel like I share this responsibility. I need to go over to Namek to go and revive my sensei, basically. And in that case, I don't really think that Gohan would go to Namek unless if Piccolo really, really insisted, saying, like, hey, you're going to Namek with me whether you like it or not, because I saw that you have power, and my people might be strong. So I think that Piccolo would be kind of inspired to go over to Namek to see if the Nameks are actually as strong as he is, or even stronger. Maybe he'd even try and learn from them or something like that, because for all we know, for all Piccolo knows at least, those Nameks could be demon like his father, basically.
Yeah.
And gosh, like whenever you actually bring it up about whenever Piccolo actually confronts Frieza, I would say just check everyone in the comment section, everyone watching. I'm going to leave a link in the description and at the end of the video of Qaaman's video about what if Piccolo defeated Frieza, and you can get that there because he gives a way better explanation than I could. But that is a really interesting scenario because I see Piccolo going for the kill right away if and when him and Nail fuse. Because that's another question. Would Piccolo and Nail fuse, and when? And if they did, if Piccolo were to go over to Guru's just palace, or would this actually lead to Vegeta getting his power unlocked if Piccolo got his unlocked? Because that's another thing, is that Piccolo might not be that pure at this point. And would Guru scan Piccolo's heart and actually see what he has inside of him and actually choose to unlock his power? Because if he did that, I think that could actually lead to Vegeta getting his power unlocked. But then that's another video for another day.
I just on that note, I definitely think that Piccolo probably would get his power unlocked. Even if he didn't sacrifice himself for Gohan, that character was still in him. I mean, that he didn't need to sacrifice himself for Gohan in order to actually be a changed person. Just spending as much time with Gohan as he did and learning from him what he did, there's a decent chance or a decent idea that, yeah, he would be good enough for Guru to sense that and actually unlock his power. So considering that, yeah, like Piccolo with his power unlocked, and then potentially all the fusions that might happen in order to actually take out something like Frieza, because the Namekians can sense energy too. The Namekians probably know just how scary someone like Frieza is. I mean, when they got to Namek, Krillin was literally so petrified he could not move, just from literally sensing Frieza. So obviously the Namekians be like, look, this is who we're dealing with. This guy's a monster, and this guy's a monster, and we need to do this. Now, that's not to say that that type of thing is so taboo. I mean, they obviously didn't think about doing it at any given point, despite the fact that they were able to sense Frieza's ki and how much it scared Krillin when they first got onto Namek. So I'm not necessarily sure one way or the other whether or not it would work that way, but I think that they would probably be, considering Nail is the one who actually brought it up to Piccolo, they would find themselves at Guru's place. Guru would probably unlock his power. I'm pretty sure there might be that little push from Nail to be like, this is what we need to do in order to save our people. And Piccolo would probably jump at the idea, just considering everything that was going on.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things is that it really depends. There's like this situation right here, the make or break, or not really make or break, but just two things that really matter is whether Gohan is there or whether Gohan isn't there. And I think that Gohan being there could lead to that impactful moment that Piccolo had dying against Nappa. Because one final point I really want to bring up whenever discussing this what if, the thing is that what I think what would really make the Ginyu Force more impactful is if maybe Piccolo sacrificed his life against Recoome or something like that instead of Nappa to save Gohan. Especially since Gohan was very much near death whenever Goku actually showed up.
I think that's absolutely true. I think that's something that would probably end up being something that we would have seen, and probably a little bit more impactful than what we saw with Goku or even Vegeta. I mean, I'm sure I could even see Piccolo stepping in to destroy Goldo. I mean, I don't think that he would do. I mean, regardless of whether Vegeta or Piccolo is there, I think he still would have picked Gohan and Krillin because they were his size and he felt like he could take them out. And I can just see Piccolo just completely taking them out, and that would be another, yeah, Piccolo's got Gohan's back moment. He's a good dad.
That would actually be kind of more impactful than Vegeta saving them, because Vegeta's just like, whatever, I just use this moment to take out Goldo. But, I mean, the thing is that in this case, I think that Goku would actually be pissed off against the Ginyu Force instead of, so calm like how he was, because another thing to bring up is that I think the whole reason why he was so pissed off against Nappa and Vegeta was because Piccolo died and the Dragon Balls were gone. So I think in that sense, Goku would probably show no mercy against Recoome, Chase, and Birder. And then just Ginyu would just show up and probably end up getting defeated too.
Yeah, I completely think that could potentially happen. I mean, we just never really know. There's so many different possibilities. The one thing I like about the what ifs really is just the fact that you look at one thing, say it's different, and then it branches off into so many different possibilities.
Yeah, same here. Because, I mean, we already went over that if Piccolo were to go on to fight Frieza, if he had the power to kill him in his first form, I think he definitely would.
Yes, I think he would as well. I mean, I feel like he wasn't so far beyond, and I think you did a video about this as well, considering the power levels. He wasn't so far beyond Frieza in his second form to literally end him. And I don't remember that fight being Piccolo playing with Frieza. I thought it was just he had the upper hand, and he was trying to fight. And Frieza, with his transformations, obviously got the upper hand. But I think with an idea that he could potentially have over 1 million power level, suppress it. Frieza has no scouter, and they know just how evil Frieza is, having wiped out an entire race that he had gotten to know. it would be one of those things that he probably would take out Frieza almost immediately, having that much more of a power difference on him.
Yep, definitely. But another thing that's kind of negative about Piccolo killing Frieza is that there'd be no Super Saiyan, and whenever we get over to the artificial humans arc, 17 and 18 will have their way.
That's true. I think that that's absolutely true, because other than the fact that Piccolo potentially fusing with Kami later, if he's already done that, shown his true colors, okay with fusion, potentially even fusing with more Dragon Warriors, yeah, like the other Namekian warriors, there would be probably an easier time for him, maybe, having gone through that and fusing with much more people than Nail. Easier to actually fuse with Kami, and maybe even take the win himself, considering at that point doing all that other stuff should be far stronger than he was at the end of the last arc and everything about that. But I just don't see it happening, really. Maybe the androids would come in and wreck shop, and Cell would literally come in, absorb them, take out everyone, no need for Boo. And because there's no Saiyans anymore, Beerus doesn't show up, and Super never happens, Oob never happens, and yeah.
Yep. I mean, there's a lot of pluses in this scenario, but many, many minuses. Just one last plus I want to bring up is that I think that if Nail were to bring up the fusion to Piccolo and Piccolo were to fuse initially, I think that there might be actual better build-up for that fusion. Just because whenever we saw it, it was just so all of a sudden. But do you have anything else that you want to add to this what-if discussion?
No, I think I'm good, man. Thanks for having me, though.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. But anyways, guys, be sure to sub to Real. He makes lots of great content. Movies, Dragon Balls, and all the works. But as always, guys, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and have a great day, guys.